Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Design Recharge. I am your host, Diane Gibbs, and I'm really excited to have Sterling Hundley today with me. He's an artist, a painter, a professor, an illustrator. He's the director of the art department at VCU, and he's taught at the Illustration Academy, and he's just an amazing artist. And I met him about 10 years ago in the hallway at in Pollock, in the Pollock building. And so I'm really glad to have you on, and I'm really excited about this project that you're working on. So why don't you give us a little background on how you started as an illustrator and an artist?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't wandered far from home. I'm a VC graduate and I went through the communication arts program there and knew I wanted to be an artist. I kind of grew up, I always identified myself that way, except for a brief period of time where I thought I was going to be a professional basketball player, and that didn't work out so well. But yeah, I got into college, and the moment that I was able to start coupling drawing and problem solving together, I knew I'd found at least my direction to pursue for a while. So, first illustration assignments I had, it just gave me the opportunity to do both of those things. So, um, went through VCU's program, and if you recall, the program used to be quite large back then. It was design, kinetic imaging, illustration, and everything else. So since then, it's actually been broken down into different groups, and I'm now a professor in the communication arts department as well. Um, One of the things I realized as a student was, I looked around and there just wasn't, um, there weren't a whole lot of recent success stories in illustration. And that wasn't, it's not a statement on the school as much as, I just, proximity and location or whatever it was, but I started to look around my classmates, and I knew that I had something I was working on that people were reacting to, and I figured I'd better start doing some things differently than other people are doing, because just the old suggestion of, okay, send out your postcards and wait for the mail to ring. I don't sit still very well, and the idea of waiting for other people to uh, validate my career by calling me didn't have a whole lot of charm. So um, I was reading a publication called Step Inside or Step by Step Graphics. It's now Step Inside Design, and I came across an article about a school called the Illustration Academy, and I started looking through this work, and I was blown away by it. I was like, wow, these professionals are amazing. And then I realized that they were the students. Oh man, I'm a little far behind here. So I looked at the faculty they had, and it was just top notch, top tier. It was a summer workshop. Convinced VCU to let me transfer my last 12 credits through the Illustration Academy. Went out there and made great friends, made some really good inroads into the industry. Came back to Richmond, and kind of found myself back where everybody else is. I was in tables and using my tip money at the bar, and realized that I was kind of on the dead end to nowhere. And uh, then moved out to Kansas City and partnered with some folks out there, and um, worked with some people out there just to kind of move away from home and have an opportunity to be around Mark English, legendary illustrator, his son John English, and so that was kind of the formative years of my career, really.
And then when I met you, you were moving or you had been living in New York. And I know you were working as an illustrator and very successful illustrator for about 15 years. What was the big change? Like, what was that thing that, hey, I want to do something different?
It keeps coming back to a large idea and very personal thing, but I can summarize it in a single word. I wanted to be the author. I wanted to be responsible for content. And there's an interesting thing that happens in illustration, and what I uh, found myself in a situation all the time where, again, I was waiting for someone else to call, and what validated the project or the artwork being created was that someone else initiated the process. So simply the fact that they had a budget, and they had a need. It's like, oh yeah, sure, great, I'll do this. And I really enjoyed working within parameters for years. I still work within parameters, but now I define it as called a three-sided box, right? You've got time, you've got money, and then you've got the content. And if you don't have a box that's built, we've all done this. We've sat in front of a blank canvas or a blank screen and said, I'm going to make something. I'm really excited to do this. I've got all this stuff I have to say. And all of a sudden, you have no idea where you're going because you don't know what it is that you're trying to say. So it came down to that. I had to figure out through some of my frustrations of pretty much getting to do what I wanted to do in illustration profession. Say, okay, well, what's next? And what's the challenge? And I'm always looking for new challenges, new directions, an opportunity to fail and learn. And I had to take all those things that identified me, and I broke the mechanism. I walked away from it, and it's hard. It's scary, and I'm still at the rebuilding stage of my painting career. But I feel like this show, it'll be my third solo exhibition here in Richmond, is it's a launching pad for me. This particular show is a convergence of my skill sets that I was identified for in illustration, um, coupled with my authoring, problem generating, problem identifying, problem solving abilities as a painter and a writer, kind of coming together.
Cool. Well, the great thing about Spreecast is that you can actually chat with us over there. You can ask a question right below Sterling. But another great thing is that we can actually bring up some images. So Sterling, I know he sent me a bunch of images specifically about the Saint Hubris project, but he also sent me some about his with his illustrations. So we're going to look at those first, and I'm going to pull them up one on one. And if you want to talk about them a little bit, kind of give them an idea, since most of us are usually visual people, and that's what Design Recharge is for, just kind of give us a jolt every week. So here's the first one, and what happens is you can actually drag your mouse on top of the window and scoot it over so that you can still see Sterling if you want. And you just have to move it around a little bit, but
Yeah, I cover
and
my
then
own face. Then is that okay?
you can, or you could cover mine. But that's how Spreecast works. So, do you want to talk about this piece?
Yeah, this was. I'll kind of back up a little bit and want to say one other thing that's pertinent to this conversation. I was recently invited to be a part of the Delaware Art Museum's 100 years, the state of the art illustration uh, show. So, stumbling over my words today, but it's uh, it's a historical kind of slice of what has happened in the past 100 years since the father of American illustration, Howard Pyle, passed away. And I was up at the museum, and I mean, just amazing people to be around, to be a part of this thing. Ralph Eggleston, the art director from Wally and Pixar for Toy Story and Finding Nemo, and Milton Glaser, Bernie Fuchs. It sounds like I'm name dropping, but maybe I am. It's just I'm still a little bit shocked that I was included in this group. But Mort Drucker and John Cuneo and Peter DeSev, and just a really amazing opportunity. Oh, Phil Hale was the other, to be a part of this. But I was one of two artists who were actually there, and I had a chance to speak, and I saw this distinct division between Bernie Fuchs and that camp, which was so much about the narrative and the aesthetic, and the Milton Glaser school of thought, which was about the concept. And as an illustrator, serendipity or just an awareness of kind of different directions, that became my mission in my career, was not to further the divide, but actually see if I can bridge those things together, uh, the narrative versus the conceptual. So a number of these pieces, some of them fall on one side, which is just the aesthetic storytelling, and many fall on the other side, which is idea driven. But I have tried to couple those things together and find out where that dividing line is, and see if those things could actually coexist. So um, this particular image was a commission for a Stanley Kubrick anthology, and um, everyone here on Design Recharge, I identify myself as a designer who paints or a designer who illustrates more than anything else, and it seems to be the spine of continuity between all things related to creativity. So everything from illustration to drawing to music to writing, there is a design to it all that really compels me. With this particular image, I was trying to find those disparate things and see what how I could create the bridge between these unrelated items. So Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket is referenced in here. There's a real infamous scene of the lime pit where these bodies are kind of laid throughout. But this also references the monolith from Space Odyssey 2001. So the shape, the form, and just to see what happens if I can play with perspective. And there's an obvious Picasso reference to Guernica in here. So I'm always pulling in notes from art history and not bashful about saying, yeah, this is an inspiration, but hopefully I've been able to take some notes.
All right, well, we're going to bring up the next one, which I believe is a book cover, or
Theater
maybe it's
poster, actually.
a poster. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was fortunate to work with a number of theater companies. I had a background in airbrushing at theme parks. If you were at DCU, then you know King's Dominion, right?
Right.
I worked up there for 4 summers, and when I was there, I fell in love with typography, which seems like a weird place to fall in love with type. But airbrushing these forms, everyone else is using stencils, and I shouldn't say everyone, but we had these scripts that we were working on, and like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to learn something from it. And not knowing much about typography, I started copying letter forms, and doing so, I was doing a lot of writing at the time, and I very much intentionally made that script my handwriting. So my handwriting now looks like not airbrush script, but it became a lot more interesting aesthetically than my cryptic handwriting was before. That said, I got to the place where if I'm going to start thinking about wanting to do things like theater posters, then I want to show that I can do it all. I can do the image as well as the type and design, and try to integrate those things maybe in a cohesive fashion. So a lot of theater projects started coming in from there. This is one of many that I did for the Lyric Opera of Kansas City, and I think this particular season I did 5 or 6 different posters for them, and did some things. I did something for Broadway and everything between. So this particular story, the Pearl Fishers, takes place in a little fishing village, and in this fishing village there is the king, and there is uh, just a commoner, and there's this very operatic type of love triangle develops when this mysterious veiled woman enters into the fishing village. They both fall in love with her. The pearls play a necklace ultimately, and the two star-crossed lovers kind of their liberation. So I try to bring all these things in. The interesting thing that I found as a hook in this particular concept was the veiled woman. If she removed her veil, it was supposed to bring bad luck uh, to the fishing village. And something along those lines happened, but the fishing net and the veil became kind of this visual device metaphor with similarity as well. It allowed me to kind of ensnare them, see the tension and the resistance from all.
Cool. I really like the type too. I wondered if you had done that. This is a part of a series, I believe, because there's another one that's very similar. And um, do you want to talk and maybe
Yeah,
mention what mediums you're using? Maybe.
yeah. Sorry, I didn't know what the question was, but um, I was working for Virginia Living Magazine for quite some time, and it was one of these dream assignments where I'd worked with Tyler Darden, who was the art director at 64 Magazine, and 64 Magazine unfortunately went under. I was working with him on fiction story every issue there. He contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm art director of a new magazine. We have this beautiful large scale, beautiful print, beautiful reproduction. Um, we want to give you the back page." And that's never happened before or since. What do you want to do on it? And I was like, wow. Well, I've got a real interest in drawing. Obviously, illustration was why it was calling me. I said, and I wanted to travel. I said, so how about this? How about you guys pay me to travel around Virginia? I'll find stories, kind of like a visual journalist, and I'll write them, and then I'll illustrate them. And you pay me to do this. Okay, great. So it happened that way for a while. It was fantastic. I had my then fiance, now wife, kind of, she was in these stories and they were kind of developing and meandering stories that didn't have real focus to them other than they were seeking out adventure. The budget kind of dried up for the travel, and it became a focus on legends and stories related to Richmond. Being a huge history buff, I really got into the history of my city, and in particular, this is an illustration of Irene Langhorne, who was one of three very famous Virginia beauties, and there was an illustrator by the name of Charles Dana Gibson, and he was famous for penning the Gibson Girl, who ultimately dictated fashion, and women would see these drawings he would do. They go out and get their hair done up in the style that he had imagined. Well, he was very prominent. This is back when illustration actually had some serious cachet. He helped found the Society of Illustrators up in New York and was internationally famous for his illustrations. Well, he fell in love with Irene Langhorne, and so this illustration in particular is all about going from Gibson's gal to Gibson's girl, and I even reference some of the stylization in Gibson's pen work in her hair. But this is kind of pulling her. She wasn't obscure, but the idea of pulling her out of relative obscurity into the limelight, because she then went on to become the Gibson girl face from then on. She was his model, and this kind of concept there. The next image I think you're going to pull up is the shipwreck piece.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a series in the sense that they related to each other. I one of the things that I've kind of that I teach and that I've discovered is that this model of ideation and concepts, that we have two things that we're trying to see if I get my hands on the screen here. Two things that we're trying to form together. Um, the remix generation will say, "Oh, we're just rehashing and remixing things that already exist, and everything's already been done, and we're just finding new ways of packaging it." I am very much a secessionist of the remix generation. I think that that is a very bleak outlook on the arts and the role of arts and culture and everything where we're going, because it means that everything's been done. Why bother? And the only logical conclusion is homogenization of culture and of the arts, and I can't buy it. So my interjection to that sounds like we're saying the same thing. That okay, we're taking two ideas and putting them together. I think that that misses a real opportunity of interjection of self. And if you believe what your mama told you, that you are unique and wonderful, and there's never been anyone else that has ever been like you or ever will be again. And I do believe that's true for each of us, that the time and place in which we live, the politics, the movies, the music, the technology, it all shapes a unique experience. Although the human condition is consistent, that'll always be the same, repeat themes. We bring something new to this time and place, and that becomes our responsibility to document this thing. So, sorry for the diatribe there, but the the idea is that it's not that the two things have to be original or unique. It's how you as an individual bring them together that has never been seen before. And I think that there's a lot to be said about originality living there in that space. Um, as a result, in my career arc, my personal story arc, um, I've been very deliberate about taking things that I'm interested in and seeing if I can figure out how to build that bridge between them. It relates with career ambitions. So in illustrations, like, all right, I'm interested in concept versus narrative. I come back to this versus that, perception versus reality. Um, you know, any dynamic or counterpoint that I can kind of pull into these things is really compelling to me, and it presents a much larger problem to solve. So we're back to the idea of problem solving, which is really in creation, because I authored that. So that said, this piece and the last piece were part of a pursuit of mine, where I was trying to bridge a couple of different things together, and that creates a common thread throughout a body of work that lasts for a period of time. And that's the consistency that you're seeing there. Yeah, I actually did this one first. There was a romance that I was really after there. Um, and I wanted to try to tie that together with the next. The other piece probably was a year later, maybe 6 months, or I don't even know. Related, but it didn't relate. So this particular illustration was a story called Shipwreck, and this is another one for Virginia Living magazine. and this is the Captain Charlton ran a ship aground in Virginia, off the coast of Virginia, and in that day and age, they didn't really have any means of getting the ship back to the ocean, so they would just let the ship sit there and rot. Well, he had a particular affinity for the ship and didn't want to just see it destroyed and consumed by time. So he decided that he and his crew were going to live on the ship long enough for the tides to come back in and to reclaim the ship and take it back out to the ocean. Um, his captain quarters were very plush, very ornate, and he went as far as actually having his honeymoon on the bridge of the captain's quarters of the ship. So that's what this moment is. And the little hitch, the little concept, because this is almost predominantly narrative, is I wanted to give a sense that the ship was listing, right, by the tilt of the angle. Um, but when you look out the window, you start to realize that, wait a second, they're actually on the ground. There's someone standing out there. That's the little figure through the window. The only reason I put him in there is so that you could see that he's standing on the ground. It's a play of, okay, this isn't actually at sea, it's run aground. What's going on? So anything that I can interject in there to create a question. Um, I think that the biggest issue that I've always had with illustration is I was taught that illustration is there to illuminate text. Well, that means that the image is relegated or subjugated to text itself and is secondary. I think that each one is a powerful art form. I think that each one brings a great deal to it, but I also like the idea that together they can actually perform and tell a deeper.
Totally. All right. Well, will roll through some of these other ones faster because I want to spend more time on your story that you created. And even though you started working in this manner of writing these stories, which kind of is what you've done now. Did you really write a story for the story of Saint Hubris?
It's interesting. One of the things that I came across, and I think I sent you the image. There's one illustration. To backtrack a little bit. The story of Saint Hubris is framed around the Catholic story of Saint Hubert.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I talk to students about all the time that I truly believe is that you need an element of familiarity in storytelling. You have to have something. I mean, it's kind of where I lose interest in fantasy. And this isn't a slam against fantasy. I kind of grew up looking at some fantasy things, but the distinction between, say, science fiction and fantasy. Science fiction is grounded in some type of reality, right? It's in the future, but it's grounded in some type of past reality. Um, Fantasy kind of plays by its own rules, and it's a harder world to access. It's kind of like if you know the rules, and there are rules there. Don't get me wrong, but the people who are in that world know the rules, and the people who aren't, well, you can't play unless you're willing to commit some time to learn about things. Right? So you look at something like Pan's Labyrinth is a reference I pull up all the time in storytelling, where it's a connection of a fictional history paired with a fantasy. And if it was just the fantasy, for me personally, it would have lost me. I never would have seen the movie. But I love that movie because through the historical fiction, I'm brought in to say, yeah, I can connect with this. I see this, I follow the story, and all of a sudden it takes a hard left turn, and you're going down into this fantasy world. And it's that point of the familiar that allows for the introduction of a wider audience. And I'm not trying to confuse what I'm saying with the idea of popularity, because I don't. That's not a barometer of quality, but accessibility.
Right.
Um, so for me, the story of Saint Hubert, it's by default, it's kind of riddled with some holes in it, right? So, and this is not anti-Catholicism here. This is just looking at it for what it is. It's a story that's hard to quantify. Um, Vicente, great to see you out here, man. Garen, great to see you here too. Louis as well. So sorry, I want to say hello to people in the chat over there. So one of the things that I have students do as an exercise is this notion of, I call it character container. And it's me, again, trying to convince young artists that they have something worth saying. Even if they think their story is not so interesting, it actually is. We all have unique methods by which we arrive at some place. And in this character container exercise, I start with, okay, draw a stick figure. Make it as simple and, you know, as basic as you possibly can, truly. And I want this character to grow with you. And you realize that the fundamental elements of storytelling are character, conflict, resolution. Almost every story can be boiled down to a very simplified equation like that. Once you realize that, you realize, okay, well, let me interject myself and my story as a character. And I'm going to go out, I'm going to go to the grocery store today. I'm going to have some interaction with another human being or a grocery cart or whatever. There's going to be some thing that happens. If we can encourage these students to start treating this character and face a certain situation, they have four choices, right? You can have the character do what you did, have the character do what you wish you did, have the character do what you wish you hadn't done, or just have the character go crazy and do something that doesn't relate to reality at all. You've become an author. You've all of a sudden written a story because then there is a logical consequence to that action. So this character starts to take on form. We draw them out. They start to develop. They start to take on their own character attributes and things that we know. So Saint Hubert was a story that I came to be familiar with through working for Virginia Living. Patron saint of hunters, patron saint of mathematicians. So we have this violence, and we have this pursuit, and we have this ambition, and we also have this science, right? So that interesting marriage of those two things kind of piqued my interest, right? Plus the fact that St. Hubert went into the woods on, I said Easter Sunday in my video, but it's actually Good Friday. And while in the woods hunting, when he should have been in church, right? There's a lesson there, moral, um, Catholic story. He came across the white stag. And in this white stag, he came to quickly realize that, the white stag actually was God. If the viewers, listeners know about the white stag throughout history, Mina, what are you doing here? You should be working. Um, the white stag is goes back all the way to pre-Arthurian legend, and it's emblematic of that which we cannot obtain. It's the ultimate hunt, the ultimate chase. So here he is squaring off against the white stag, standing still for him, and you realize, oh, this is God. In the Catholic legend, he falls to his knees, begs God for forgiveness, and uh, soon thereafter gives up his worldly goods. Um, it's an interesting story. Um, I was curious about what actually happened in that moment of time, and I don't want to talk so much about what I'm painting while I'm painting, but I will say that the message paired with the story and the symbolism, it's very personal, deals with my own personal ambitions, deals with the human condition of our need to always want more and perpetually pursue larger things to our ultimate personal detriment, the detriment of humanity. I know it's big picture stuff, but down to so the story itself, which is really a foil for these larger kind of statements, um, becomes a little bit more digestible, a little bit more palpable than preaching, right? The moment you start preaching to someone, you already have an agenda, and I want to leave things in my paintings, unlike illustration, very open-ended. I think that the function of painting dictates that. You have to have a dialogue with the viewer versus a dictation. Right? In illustrations, you have limited time, limited space, get the message across. I've got plenty of that stuff in painting, plenty of time, plenty of space. As a result, hopefully I can make the viewer think a little bit. So even in method, the techniques, I'm pairing very geometric shapes. They mean something in the paintings. The organic shapes mean something. They're emblematic of the story arc and greater symbolism. So, anyways, that's kind of where that stuff is coming from and where it's kind of heading. The show that opens up next Friday is the first in a series, and I'm looking huge for me. 9 feet tall, 8 feet tall, which is a unique problem.
I have a picture to show because it is way big, and you're tall.
Yeah, I'm not small.
You're really tall. Let me see if I can find that. So I just about that kind of grid, you're kind of all these geometric shapes, which I don't see that so much in your earlier work. So is this just a new kind of piece. And I have another image that you didn't send me, but I went and hunted you up on Instagram to kind of see, because the process work is just incredible. This is one of the pieces, and to me it looks like you're ripping paper, and you're making cuts with X-Actos, and you're kind of collaging this stuff together, and it does have this grid or geometric quality.
Yeah,
um, but are these just little studies
they
like
are.
this here?
I've got that one here. Hold on one second. I'll show you.
Okay. And if you're new to Spreecast, you can actually type in a question in the
Yeah,
chat. And
studies, but they aren't. They're intended as final works. This is actually the last step here. Let me this away. This will be in the show
oh
too.
yeah,
But it is dimensional. I mean, you can see possibly there's edges all over.
mm-hmm.
Um, this is
Is it on Masonite?
this is on chipboard, and it's
Mm,
packaging tape, right? So
cool.
this process is the most personal process I've ever come up with, and I didn't get it from somewhere. It's something I just had an epiphany one day. I was working on. Actually, I got the other piece over here, but I sent it to you. I think the Johnny Cash piece. Um,
Yes, I'll pull that up.
um, but that image was the first in this process. Big fan of history, also art history. So I told you I have these arcs that I'm trying to pursue in my career, and once I exhaust one, it's really interesting because I know when I've done it, and you don't know what you're shooting towards, but when you're trying to bridge these things together, and you give yourself a trajectory that's way out in the future, you start to make a mark for that, right? And then when I hit that mark, it's like I all of a sudden lose interest. I don't want to do it anymore. It's like, okay, I figured that out. What's next? And I start moving on to something else. Commercially, it was harder to shift gears, right? Because it's like, okay, well, we're calling you for this thing that you did that we saw that I may have done 6 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing this thing now. And are you interested in this? And they would say, no, we're interested in this. So I would do it the way they wanted, but continue to pursue things until I had enough stuff that kind of populated my portfolio and everything else. But this particular image was, it was kind of a whim. And what where it came from is this seed of a thought that was planted by Bernini, of all people, Vatican City sculptor. He's one of my absolute favorites. So I've got Bernini on one end of the spectrum, and I've got Picasso on the other end of the spectrum, right? So just total opposites, and I love them both for different reasons. But I did an illustration for Tyler. Seems like everything I ever did was for Virginia Living, but I did other stuff, I promise. But my best work probably came from working with him because it was so open and so familiar, and just had a great working relationship. Um, I did a portrait of Johnny Cash. He liked it. It was fine. But I'm a big Johnny Cash fan. I was like, man, this is not doing the man justice. So I had another night to kill before the actual going to press day. And I saw, I had chipboard sitting around, and I had packaging tape. It was like, they're the same color. So going back to Bernini, I had found this quote that was very off-putting in the beginning. He said, "Never have I felled an errant stroke." Wow, that's so arrogant. That is so incredibly arrogant. I've never made a mistake in my life, my art. I started thinking about it. It resonated. I mean, it troubled me so much. I don't even say resonates. It troubled me so much that I thought about it all the time. I finally came to this conclusion. I said, what if? What if what Bernini actually meant was, in order to make good decisions, you have to make bad decisions. And in order to arrive at something that is successful, you have to have failure. So it goes back to this notion of dynamic and counterpoint. And I kind of came up with this idea for a process or a method of thinking of the law of averages, that everything's an aggregate. And we work so hard in illustration to mask our mistakes. And at that point in time, I was walking around galleries looking for, like, okay, I get John Singer Sargent's brilliance, I get Degas' brilliance, but I want to know where Van Gogh screwed up. I want to know where he made a mistake and chose to paint a different color over something else. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow, this is like the other side of the coin, and the process became so intriguing to me. So this particular piece and the one that you asked about is a process of I'll do a complete drawing underneath, and I'll like the drawing. I'll be satisfied with it, and then in this instance, I did the young Johnny Cash first. He had three different periods in life. The middle-aged Johnny Cash second, and the older Johnny Cash third. And each one is a blind drawing where I'm not looking at what came before, so I'm just drawing. And once I have all that information, it's like all the good stuff is there. I just have to rediscover it. So I start tearing things away and cutting through it and pulling things up. And, it's the most fun I could possibly have with painting. Um, and I've been looking for a way. It's not the most archival process in the sense that the tape starts to curl up, and so now I've actually found that if I use caustic wax, it seals it, embeds it, and the dimensionality actually starts to play a role because it's thick in places, real thin in others. So it starts to give me a depth of field. And so I'm entering into the place now where I'm actually doing like backgrounds first and layering tape on foreground, so depth of field to start playing a bigger role. Yeah, that's
Well, that's a really cool piece. How big is that, and what other medium are you using?
ink, acrylics, stamps, even like just the serendipity of this one was on cardboard of all things, right? And if you see in the top right corner there, that's like, wow, I've got this wasn't my design. I've got this microphone and the striations mimic. I could see the ridges coming through, so I just kept digging until the
Yeah.
stuff came through. But that one's it's 18 by 24, which 16 by 20, 18 by 24 is pretty standard working illustration size. So you can see the jump in scale is crazy for me.
So this is the piece that I pulled. I think I'm one of your backers, so I get these great emails with these awesome images, and you really can't tell how big this is, maybe, but it's big. Like you came up to like the guys, like the bridal or something, or whatever. Like I mean, you're very tall. How tall are you?
6'2". Yeah, I'm not.
Me too. No, I'm just kidding.
I know you're lying.
I'm like 5'1".
It's the internet. We'll run.
But but it shows how big this piece is, and I just love that you're always trying this new stuff, and even in this process and in this one project, the Spoils of Saint Hubris, you've even gone with the kind of tape thing, and then you're going and you're using acrylics. Is that what you're using? I know in some of your Vimeo videos you like those better than oil.
These are all oils. Yeah, these are giant oils.
These are oils.
So some base acrylics and things like that down. But I like put myself into a situation where I can fail and digging myself out of it. So first time I ever approached scale as part of the concept was my first solo exhibition, and I don't think I sent you any images there, but it's interesting you're picking up on the faceted elements because that entire first show was I mentioned before I broke the mechanism, right? So rendering, it's like I can render things, I can draw things, and I've gotten kudos for that, whatever, right? So you get to a place with that type of thing, and it's like, oh, okay, it doesn't interest me anymore. What's next? And I think I'm a perpetual student, and I love learning about new things. So um, the first show that I ever did, and I'm not sure if I can send you something and have you put it up still or not, but um, it's might be too late for us to do that.
We,
But
I have to pin it on Pinterest, and then I have to pull it back, so I can add it as a link. If you send it to me, I'll pin it to the pin board.
I'm teaching online classes these days too, so we've got something that's a little bit more less two different things working together. But the particular process that I used for that first solo show, I didn't love everything that came out of it. I love that it crushed me. It seems like a really weird thing to say. It totally destroyed my ego because it's like I don't have any barometer of quality assessment. I can't go to my old bag of tricks. I can't go to rendering. I tell people I broke my rendering muscle on it. But it basically what it was is I took these 3-inch by 3-inch squares and I created Monotypes. I had Jeff Love and Leslie Herman, that were my studio assistants at the time, helped me out, helped save my life. Those 3 months we were working on the paintings, but we were making these like 3-color, 3-value monoprints. And just like, you go out and you look at the clouds and you see shapes and faces, I had an idea of what the content, what I wanted to address, but I didn't have a clue what the images were going to look like. So I started massing shapes together, and I started looking at these little 3-inch squares, like, oh, that looks like a face, and that looks like a horse head, and that looks like a cow head, and all of a sudden I took these 3-inch by 3-inch squares and I grouped them together into 6-inch by 6-inch, and I was trying to take, my whole mission was trying to culture chaos, and the chaos was the screen printing, the monotypes, and the culture was this grid. I built these giant grids, and everything had to fit within a grid shape. And then I used paint to kind of stitch them together. But they eventually each one became a study for the subsequent larger piece, so 6-inch to 1 foot to 2 foot to 4 foot. And these 4-foot by 4-foot square paintings. And I learned a great deal about abstraction and where that line is between abstraction and representational through that process. And that image that I sent you, if you have the one, it's all these 3 big paintings. It's the first one in the series, but the guy's got a taller hat. He's surrounded by dogs. You have that one that you can show. Not that one.
Is that it?
There's another one where the reds are more saturated.
Oh,
but this one's based off of it.
Yeah.
I think
He's on the horse on this other one?
No, he should be standing on the ground. Maybe I didn't send it to you, but
is it blue?
No, it's red, greens, blues.
Sorry, my dog's barking. I'm at home today. Dogs are standing around him. Maybe this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, this
Sorry.
I consider this no problem. I consider this my last illustration, my first painting, at least in the direction I want to go. It's one of those things. I was trying for something, and you can see from the personal work I was doing at the time that this abstraction of the shapes and forms of the background fed into this. But then I've got a dog too. I thought it was actually...
Nikki said the sound effects are quite appropriate. Yes, we planned that.
Right.
Sorry about that.
So this particular image garnered the attention of a private collector who came through, and he responded to this. It happened to be my favorite thing I'd done up to that point. And it's another one of those things where I threw a marker out there. I had an ambition. I realized it's a particular piece, and then it was rewarded. It's happened that way every single time when I'm on a pursuit. And I have this problem I'm trying to solve. I'll get an award. Like my very first medal from the Society of Illustrators was I was trying to figure out how to bring line and tone together. I did a piece. And it's like, this is it. I figured it out. I was like, if I'm ever going to get an award for something, this is it. Send it up. Sure enough, it was my first medal. It's happened again and again and again like that, and it's weird, how it kind of all works. So this particular piece happenstance.
Sometimes when you put yourself out there,
contacted me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
sometimes when you put yourself out there, sometimes when you put yourself out there, it is that fear kind of thing. And you talk about that even in your Kickstarter video, that it's just about trying and living and just trying something that's different. And but it's about having the guts to do that. So that's one reason you're winning awards for things when you do it the first time, I think.
I scare myself to death. I will do anything that it takes to be unsettled. And, it's been tough. I don't mean to make it sound like it's easy, but once you kind of learn to embrace that mentality of, yeah, I'll fail publicly. I'll make a fool of myself. That's fine. You realize that your life is all these things together, not just that moment in time. And so this, the past 3 years has been tough. It's 2 years really, because I left illustration, I guess it was 2 Januaries ago. My book came out. It seemed like the perfect time to encapsulate one career and start on another. And you'd asked about teaching. I was already teaching, so the teaching allowed me the means to do that. I didn't lose my house or anything, but my income was coming. Right. It was tough, and I guess there's confidence or faith that your passions and your ambition is going to lead you somewhere and somewhere positive. and it's been a struggle. So I feel like I'm with this exhibition on the brink of having that body of work together. Now I'm going to go back up to New York just like I did when I was an illustrator. I'm not living up there, but I'm going to make these pilgrimages. I'm going to humble myself again and show my work and get shot down and beat the streets and meet people, make connections, and find a venue to show these works and uh, start this career. And we'll see where it goes. I'm excited. And it's it's interesting. This Kickstarter campaign it's been crazy because you toil away in the studio and you don't really get much feedback. And then I launched that. I was terrified of launching it. You're making up all these excuses like, well, the sound's not good enough, and the video and all this other stuff that I'm not offering good enough rewards. And then all of a sudden, um, I see people, and yourself included, that just they validate pursuit, and it's hugely humbling and very flattering and exciting. And all of a sudden, this thing I've been doing in the privacy of my own studio or school studio has a little bit of traction, and it's terribly exciting.
Well, I think that's the great thing about social media and why I like what it allows us to do is you created a following and you had people who backed you. And if you go, and I'm going to put this up in just a second, but and I'll put it in the chat so that people can go to the Kickstarter. And here's the links over there. And you had, and with Kickstarter, I'm not super familiar. I know this was your first Kickstarter that you had done. How many days do you have to raise your money?
It's up to you. It's either 30 or 60, and they actually recommend 30. I think part of why would they recommend 30 is it gives people a finite period of time. 60 days is kind of, that's a long time, really.
Mm-hmm.
They'll spend 60 days.
Well, and you,
So, go ahead.
go ahead.
I just say they'll spend 60 days on larger projects like movies or video games where it's just more comprehensive. But for an individual, 30 days is either you're going to do it or not.
And how Kickstarter works, if you're not familiar with, you back for a certain amount, and then they give you something, or even sometimes it'll be $1 and you'll get a screenshot for your phone or something. But there's all these, and you can click over there. But what is amazing is you actually had, and maybe it's my cold, but I can't think of what it's like, the stretch incentive or something. You met your goal on the 22nd of February, and I'm not sure when you started it.
I started on the 21st.
But
yeah, it was literally.
So, and you met it in a day?
Yeah, it was literally.
I mean,
it was crazy. It was crazy. It was 24.
That's
I was sitting. I actually launched it and I don't say this. I hope it doesn't come off arrogant or bragging. It was mind blowing. And you're right with social media. It's been one of these things. And just to clarify, I haven't met it yet. I mean, I've met the goals, but until it's done, it's not done, and people can take their bids back. So my fear, it was really one patron that really liked one of the images we're going to show here, who she wanted to support me and she liked the work, and it just you never know who you cross paths with, and by happenstance, this if this person holds up, because I really hope it works out. Um, this person was a student of mine from the art department, which is the other school I teach at. She lives in Russia, and I'm teaching this international online program. And I mean, I can't tell you what it means to have someone. When you do an illustration, okay, there's a need. We have text, we have images, we have photography, we have a publication we're trying to sell to an audience, and there's a budget. So everything is, you're doing it. There's a catalyst that comes down to a commercial project. In painting, it's like someone wants one of your works in their home or museum or wherever it's going to show, or corporate venue. But that kind of money, I just it's not the world. It's I can't put into words. It's deeply moving, and all of the support that I've gotten from people has been, I don't know. It's unlike any feeling I've had in illustration, save winning awards or things. which is just a recognition of what you're doing. And I think that one of the things that submission of mine is um, I am a professor. I really try to help people, and I try to take people in. I try to encourage them. Hopefully I'm always there as a resource for students who care about their own life, their own careers, and um, maybe there's some karma that's played into this as well. Um, but we launched the Kickstarter while I was at the art department workshop in Kansas City, and I was sitting there watching it, just kind of some things coming in. All of a sudden, it was there within it's like by 5 p.m. 24 hours later, it happened. So that's interconnectivity of the world now. It's amazing.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that you're talking about with just people connecting with painting or connecting with an illustration. And what you try to do with your students is you try to have something that either you can connect to, so it makes it more meaningful. It makes it more meaningful to the audience. And I think that that's what's great, one about Kickstarter, but it's also great in this is like Noah Scalen, also a VCU guy. He did really use social media when he was putting his 365 project out. And it's the same thing. I mean, in 24 hours, Sterling, that's amazing for, and it's a big body and a work for you to do. I know you have a show at the end of February. Is that right? The beginning of
Next
March?
week, yeah, that's crazy.
So how many pieces are part of um this thing that you're going to be
Right now,
going around?
the, it's a small gallery. It's a fantastic gallery called Ghostprint Gallery, and they're wide open to showing different things. But the the scale of the work, I've got 9 or 10 pieces. It depends on how far I get. They're going to be in the show, which is not a huge show, but um, two of the pieces are 8 feet plus. Space fills up really fast. The other ones are I've got another one that's 4 feet, maybe 5 feet wide by 4 feet tall. Another that's 4 by 3. So I've got four substantial works in there that, um, and then I've got the smaller pieces that are the scale that you're seeing. And it's interesting, related to scale. I want to do some pieces that are like that big, and frame them up. If I have time, I'll do them, just like little ink drawings. I love this idea of playing, coming from growing up on comics and sequential images and everything else, and loving movies. I love pace, and one of the things I find in painting is that in a venue like that, with a big painting, you want it to kill from 40 yards, you want to kill from 20 yards, and then up close, right? Well, the gallery is only so big, so people are going to be like this, right? But
Right.
I also want it to breathe, and I want them to be able to come up really close and have an individual experience versus a group experience. And there's just something about that dynamic that's really compelling. You'll see it in comics where you'll have action, 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 silence. Right? And movies do the same thing.
Mhm.
There's a crescendo. So I think that comes back to the universality of narrative and design. And but sorry to get off topic. Noah, what he's done is fantastic. I'm a huge admirer of what he's built, and very smart, very intelligent use of social media. The way I describe Kickstarter has changed the world for creatives because it's taken
Mhm.
speculation away, right? And you're now at the level, if you get some level of a pitch, um, you can seek funding through things that you haven't yet put money out for. So, I mean, there's screen prints and limited edition things I've approached the venues, they're ready to go, but we haven't printed anything yet, save the poster, right? So all these things that I'm offering, once they're funded, get made, but I don't have to make them prior to. And that will fund the next iteration of the spoils. And the spoils itself, the spoils of Saint Hubris, is going to be either 2 or 3 exhibitions. So I'm enjoying telling this narrative through multiple pieces over a period of time. Um, at this point, my story, I've done just what I told you. I'm leading the viewer into the woods up to the moment where there is the interaction with the white stag. And there are major sculptural elements that I want to come in the next shows. There'll be really big pieces. I have to make sure there's an audience for that. That my audience is ready for that. But they're pieces that could only live as sculptures. They don't make sense as paintings. So yeah, okay, here's the other thing. Um, Richmond is limiting. Um, I love Richmond, great arts community. This is not a slam. I'm personally doing everything that I can to raise Richmond Star, and I don't mean to sound like I'm Atlas kind of trying to carry this thing forward, but um, there's a price point in Richmond. You get to about $3,000 in paintings, and anyone selling there knows that you can't sell much over that. You get a few galleries that have exceptions to that, and a few collectors. Um, I want to bring a spotlight from New York down to Richmond, and I want to bring in traffic that lives outside of Richmond. So if I did a 9 foot painting, I sold it for what I needed to sell it for to make. I mean, that one painting I worked on for 2 years, right? So if someone will see a price tag, I'm like, you're asking that much money for a painting? Are you crazy? It's really not that much in the grand scheme of paintings, but for a guy starting out in painting, it's a lot of money. Um, but when you equate it to 2 years working on painting, that's I'm not going to make anything near minimum wage on it, right? Um, so you have a body of work and things that you're selling. I had to find a way to move beyond the Richmond market to bring interest in from outside. Um, I intend to do this again. I will continue to seek out an audience, and I hope that other Richmond artists do this and say, "Look, we got something really interesting going on here." And I don't know that I live yet in the highbrow world. I know I don't live in the lowbrow. I like this idea of the unibrow, right? This notion of something that's somewhere in between where we still allow narrative and we still allow we embrace the notion of craft and skill set, but we are not exclusive to the point of rejecting the other things. It's just that I don't want to jump on the bandwagon of lowbrow because everybody else is doing it. I know a lot of people who are fantastic in that world, but a lot of things it's like the world's gotten so big. I just it's not a movement anymore as much as just a thing. So I think movements happen away from things, and you have to know what you're kind of pushing against and know what you're pushing against. So
Well, I hope that you're very successful as you go to New York and you try to show and in other places as well. And Seth Godin, a big social media guy and tribe maker and things like that, he, kind of went the opposite way with publishing. He had all these people before he had the book written. He had all these people say that they would buy the book, and then he went to a publisher and say, hey, I have 10,000 copies already sold. Will you publish the book? And I think that in a way that's kind of what Kickstarter does, is instead of, it kind of takes the curation out of the galleries. They limit us by what we can see because of what they want or what they like or things like that. And so with Kickstarter, great place for creatives to make something and to go forward. When you're talking about little pieces, Marius Valdez, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he also went to VCU. He makes these little pieces, these little guys that you can get at the show, and it's just that kind of that very intimate thing that is created, I think, is really different and really neat. And I think what he has done as well is kind of interesting. I want to I want to just show a couple more images and then we got to go because I try to keep it to an hour. But Sterling, you'll just have to come back on. This is the exhibition poster, and it has a lot of movement in it. And this is a 4-color. Is this a silk screen?
yeah,
What is
it'll be a
this one?
screen print. It was started like these other ones are. That original painting lives in it's up in the Delaware Art Museum right now in that show. But the screen prints are there. They're for sale as well. We've got limited edition versions of these, but this one's 3-color. The other one's 4-color. But yeah, there's a team. There's a group in Richmond called Teammate and Triple Stamp Press. Give them a shout out because they are amazing, and I'm working with them on all the screen printing stuff, and love those guys. So if you're in Richmond or you're looking to business near Richmond, um, check them out. They're fantastic.
Cool. Well, here's a couple more images from the series. So this whole series you've been working on for over 2 years, or about at the 2 year mark?
About 2 years. It was when that collector came to my studio. One of the things that he pushed me forward on was scale, and that was really the first time I thought about it. And you know, just a quick aside, you talked about taking the curation out of the galleries. I think that's a brilliant um, perspective. I hadn't thought about this validation of we have success now, therefore this is where this is something that will sell. I mean, commercial galleries are commercial as well, and they have mortgages to pay and rents to pay and lease or
Hmm.
whatever, um, overhead and all that. Um, but this notion that people are looking to invest to collect something, and if there is a push or a consensus that yes, something has got some excitement behind it, then maybe it's been vetted a little bit before. And yeah, so I like that idea of just visibility and some element of success before going up there, and saying, yeah, this was funded, we sold the show, and it betters your opportunity of actually selling out a show. And if you sell out shows, that's so much more
Hmm.
important than making a lot of money on a show. It just shows, hey, if I want to invest in this artist, I can buy their work relatively inexpensively now. If they go on and they have a huge successful career, the return on investment, and I hate to sound like so much of a businessman, is huge. It's huge, and completely. It's something that collectors can control, because who do the gallery owners listen to? People who are buying the paintings.
Hmm.
If the people who are buying the paintings are saying,
Right.
"Sell this artist's work," it's a. I mean, it's brilliant. It really is.
There's a couple more. I just want to, and I just love the geometry in this one. It's you're getting a lot of whoop whoops over there. Not necessarily in that. Don't quote me, but a lot of people really like that color palette, and they liked the geometry in the one before as well. So this one to me has that. You know, are you just putting, making lines? And is this in your sketchbook like this? Because I know you sketch. You're a big sketcher, or you have in some of your other
Sure.
things.
Yeah, the drawing has. That's kind of where I am with this body of work. Is I brought drawing back into it, right? And that's it. Really is. So if I were to tell you what my mission was right now, I am. I want to be a designer and I want to be a painter. I'm trying to figure out where those things live. So the geometry and the facets, everything else, open spaces versus closed spaces. Those are things that I'm very aware of as I'm kind of moving into this stuff. So the drawing is something I avoided in the first, well, really the first solo exhibition. Started bringing it back into some of the screen printing stuff in the second exhibition. But this one, it's I've figured out how to pair those things together. So the new mission is design and paint. Um, there's a process in painting called planar painting, and it's just like, okay, you're seeing the light in my face, the plane here, that's a facet, right? Um, I'm also using technology. I'm using a program called Sculptress to do 3D modeling. I'm using um, I'm going to branch out eventually into Maya, trying to bring that into this, maybe even 3D printers at a point. But there is a wireframe that's very relevant in video games. Wireframe to me is a very modern, current thing, but it's got direct ancestry to planar painting. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
using closed planes to symbolize something. I don't want to give it all away. Um, versus open wireframe in this notion of ambition and trying to culture chaos. And so they become, again, a method of painting, but symbolism at the same time. Um, and I guess that's kind of where I think my unique footprint is. I'm trying to think. I don't want to sound so calculating that, oh, it's all figured out. I'll intentionally go through and lay something out and then destroy it and then find my way back into it again. And that's just both sides of the coin of creation.
Well, I think that's another thing that's great. I encourage you guys to go and look at his stuff on Vimeo, and he talks about that unexpected when you're working with a medium, and just try it, just go for it instead of just being so apprehensive. I think that that's something a lot of designers. It's about control, and we don't want to mess it up. But there's there's something to be said about that. Just how it happens and letting something happen and pushing yourself. So one, I think there's two more, and then I'll let you go, Sterling. I know I really do. Oh, that's the video, which I'm not going to play, but this is it. So you'll be able to plop that. You'll be able to play this. This is a repeat. It'll be available on designrecharge.org, and then you can click on the Sterling Hundley, and I can't remove this from air. There we go. Yeah, so and this is the one, and on the Kickstarter video, I watched it a few times, and I really liked this quote. This is, you said, you know, there was stuff in your life and where you wanted to really focus on or delve into when human ambition exceeds human compassion. And then you kind of have this guy with like these, they look like spine. It's like a spinal cord on it, and maybe it's not, or a jaw or something. I don't know, but it's what a very interesting sketch. And to me, I'm connecting to it with something when you said that, and in the video you say that exactly when this pops up or something. So I really it resonated with me, and I think, wow, you know, we do have to be business people. We want to have a house, and you have a family. You want to, you know, be able to keep electricity running. It gets cold in Richmond, but I think that there's so much, and I'm so glad that the Kickstarter was good because it was successful, because it does give you that time to work on and to explore, which I think is great. For designers, I think sometimes, and illustrators, we get stuck. We're like, well, this is what they want, you know, and we don't have time to explore. And that's the reason why I mentioned the 365 thing with Noah, was he pushed himself to do this extra thing, and that's kind of where I am with this. It has helped me a lot. You know, I've met people that I didn't meet, and hopefully it's helping some other people. And you know, it's completely, I just do it in my own time. I didn't even go to work today because I was sick. So I see some students of my students here. I really am sick, but I didn't want to not do this. I haven't missed a show since June, so I think that it's, I'm not a faker, Marius, I promise. But I wanted to put a couple other, not images, there are more images. We'll have to have Sterling back on, but this is Sterling's website, and then you can follow him on Instagram. I don't know if he wants you to follow him, but I think you should follow him because it's a lot of awesome stuff from the Spoils project as well. And then if you have any other links that you want to share, but again, we do this every week. Every week, this is at 2:30 Eastern time, unless I have a specific thing. That's what Design Recharge is. I'm a professor, but I also have my own design firm, and I don't get a lot of time to connect, and I don't have time to go out because I'm busy, just like you're busy, and your time is very precious. So that's why I do this once a week. So you can sign up for my email newsletter at designrecharge.org, or you can send me an email straight to Diane at designrecharge.org, and connect with, you can also connect with Sterling on Facebook at Blue Collar White Collar. And I'm not sure if you have one specifically for the Spoils yet, a page, but that's like your artist.
Yeah, it's just Blue Collar White Collar is where things will kind of filter into. So, but yeah, I'm easy to find online. I'm out there too much. After the show's done, I'll be offline for a week. I'm going on vacation.
Good for you. And I didn't know if you were on Twitter, and I did not have time to hunt it up, but do you have a Twitter handle I could share with everybody?
It's just Sterling Hundley with no space in there. So I think that's it. I don't know. I don't use.
Okay.
I'm tapped into Twitter somehow. I don't go there very much, but it's easy. In fact, if people just go to my website, sterlinghandley.com, I've got the Twitter feed and Facebook feed coming in there and all that. So, Mina, you're the man.
Well,
thank you for being here.
Well, Sterling, thank you so much, and I appreciate you guys staying here for a little extra time. And Sterling, we'll just have to have you back, and I can't wait to see what else you're doing. And Courtney, I'm glad you came too, even though I didn't have you in class today. You got off, so at least you come. She was a painter as well, and now she's a design student. So
well,
Great.
Thank you all.
Glad everybody could come, and
thank you for having me. And
and
really cool thing that you're doing here too.
Anytime, Sterling, and we'll just connect back. And I hope you get back on your feet and you're not falling forward anymore, so that you keep going.
It's my life. So, but I do it to myself. So y'all take care. Thanks again. And if you're in Richmond next Friday, love to see you at the show.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Bye.